My name is Evelyn Hartwell. I'm 30 years old, and it's 2024 here in Somerset, England. When my father passed away, I thought grief would be my hardest battle. I was wrong. The real pain began when I learned I'd been erased from his will, like I never existed. Keep watching till the end. The truth still echoes in that room. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. The morning of the reading felt colder than any winter I'd known. Not because of the weather, but because of them. My brothers, Oliver and James, stood by the tall bay window of my father's study, talking in hushed tones, like I was a stranger intruding on their victory. The room smelled of oak and old perfume, my father's scent still lingering in the air. The same scent that used to mean safety. Now it only reminded me how quickly love turns into possession when money enters the room. "Evelyn," Oliver said, adjusting his tie, "I didn't expect you to come. I assumed the lawyer explained." "Explained what?" I asked quietly. He smirked, glancing at James. "That you weren't included." My fingers tightened around the edge of my father's desk, the same one where he taught me to write my name when I was 5. The lawyer, Mr. Bennett, cleared his throat. "If everyone could please sit, we'll begin." As he read the will, every word felt like a blade slicing through memory. To my eldest son, Oliver Hartwell, the estate and business. To my younger son, James Hartwell, the countryside property and financial assets. And to my daughters, Evelyn Hartwell. He paused. I felt everyone's gaze on me. Then he continued, his voice quieter. "To my daughter, I leave my love and my hope that she will find her own path." That was it. Just words, no property, no account, no legacy. I didn't cry. I just stared at the old family portrait on the wall, my father's hand resting on my shoulder, his eyes warm and proud. Had that all been a lie too? Oliver leaned back, smirking. "You always wanted independence. Consider this his gift." "Don't," I whispered. "Don't pretend you understand him." He laughed under his breath. "Understand him. Evelyn, I was there, you were." Mr. Bennett closed the folder, but then hesitated. "There is one more thing," he said. "A confidential addendum your father added 3 days before he passed. He asked it to be read only in your presence." The room went still. James frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" Mr. Bennett didn't answer. He opened a separate envelope, its seal marked with my father's initials, the same seal he used for private letters. He read aloud, his tone trembling slightly. "Should my daughter, Evelyn Hartwell, attend the reading in person, she is to receive access to the enclosed trust and the key to my private study. She will understand its purpose when she enters alone." A wave of silence. Oliver's smirk vanished. "What trust?" Mr. Bennett folded the paper calmly. "I'm afraid that's all I can disclose." Their faces tightened, confusion mixed with greed. But I only felt one thing, a pull. That private study was the one room in the manor my father had always kept locked. Even after I moved out, he never let anyone enter. I rose from my chair. "I'll take the key." Oliver stepped in front of me. "No, you're not doing this alone." Mr. Bennett intervened. "That's not your decision, Mr. Hartwell. Your father's instructions were explicit." I walked past them, feeling their eyes burn into my back as I left. The hallway felt longer than I remembered, the polished floors reflecting my reflection in fragments. Each step echoed with memories, birthdays, laughter, arguments. And then the silence that followed after I'd left home. When I reached the door of his private study, I hesitated. The brass handle felt cold under my fingers. For a moment, I almost turned back, afraid of what I might find. But then I remembered the way he used to look at me when he said, "You're my mirror, Evelyn. When they forget truth, you'll remember it." Inside, the room was untouched. Dust shimmered in the sunlight spilling through half-drawn curtains. On the desk, a small leather box sat beside a framed photograph, my father and I at the lake, smiling. The box had the same initials carved on top, E.H. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a flash drive, a handwritten letter, and a single silver key. The letter read, "My dearest Evelyn, if you're reading this, it means they've already taken what they believed was theirs. But truth can't be inherited, only revealed. Use the key. It unlocks what they fear the most." I froze. The silver key wasn't for this room, it was too small. And then it hit me, the basement door. The one they always said was sealed after the flood years ago. Outside, I heard footsteps, Oliver's voice, sharp and angry. "She's hiding something, I know it." I quickly pocketed the key in flash drive, heart pounding. I didn't know what my father wanted me to find, but I could feel it. It wasn't money. It wasn't revenge. It was truth, something buried long before his death. As I stepped out, Oliver grabbed my arm. "What did he leave you?" he demanded. "Nothing," I said softly. "Just a reminder." "Of what?" "That not everything worth having comes with your name on it." He glared, but I didn't wait for his reply. I walked out into the gray Somerset afternoon, clutching the key in my hand like it was alive. The storm clouds gathered above the estate as I looked back one last time. The house that had once felt like home now looked like a battlefield, quiet, yet burning from the inside. And somewhere in that silence, I could almost hear my father's voice again, calm, knowing. When they read the will, they'll think it's over. That's when it truly begins. I took a deep breath, stepped off the gravel path, and whispered to the wind. Then let it begin. The rain had started by the time I reached the back of the estate. A thin drizzle, the kind that clings to your skin and makes the air feel heavier than it should. The gravel crunched under my boots as I made my way to the old cellar door, the one everyone said was sealed after the flood. It sat beneath the west wing, half hidden behind the ivy that had grown wild over the years. My heart was pounding so loudly I could barely hear the rain. I knelt, brushed away the wet leaves, and there it was, the rusted lock, untouched, waiting. The silver key slid in as if it had been waiting only for me. A soft click echoed, followed by a deep groan from the hinges as the door creaked open. The air that came out was cold and stale, filled with the smell of damp earth and dust. I hesitated at the top of the steps. It felt wrong, like I was walking into someone's secret. But wasn't that what my father wanted? For me to see what no one else could. I took out my phone and turned on the torch. The beam of light cut through the darkness, revealing stone walls, shelves stacked with old files, and a workbench covered in papers. Everything looked untouched for years. And then I saw it. A photograph half buried under a pile of documents. It was my father standing beside a man I didn't recognize, both smiling. On the back, written in his handwriting, "The beginning of the truth." The files beneath the photo were labeled Hartwell Holdings, confidential. I opened one, hands shaking. Inside were receipts, bank transfers, letters, all signed by Oliver. Money funneled from the estate accounts to offshore companies, names that didn't exist. My father knew. He'd known everything. I stepped back, trying to process it. My brothers had stolen from him for years. That's why I was cut out of the will. Not because he'd stopped loving me, but because he wanted to protect what was left. And that flash drive, I remembered it in my pocket. I plugged it into my phone. A folder appeared instantly. One video file. I pressed play. The screen flickered to life. My father sat in his study, weak but composed. "If you're watching this, Evelyn, then they've already read the will. By now you've seen the papers in the cellar. You know what your brothers did." He paused, his voice steady despite the frailty in it. "They thought I'd never find out, but I did, and I've made sure their lies can't survive the truth. The evidence is in your hands now. You decide what happens next." I couldn't breathe. He wasn't angry in the video, just tired, like a man who'd fought too long against his own family. Then his tone softened. "I left you nothing in the will because I didn't want them to see you as a threat. But Evelyn, you're the only one I trusted. What you do with this will define what the Hartwell name truly means." The video ended, leaving only the hum of the storm outside. I stood there for a long time, staring at the dark screen, torn between grief and fury. My father had built everything they owned, and they'd betrayed him not just with greed, but with pride. And now, all of it, the evidence, the truth, rested with me. Suddenly, I heard footsteps above me. Quick, heavy, voices muffled through the floorboards, Oliver and James. "She's down there," Oliver's voice roared. "She's found something." I panicked, pocketing the flash drive, gathering as many papers as I could. But before I could climb the stairs, the door above me slammed shut. A bolt slid into place. I froze. They'd locked me in. "Evelyn," Oliver's voice called from above, calm now, too calm. "I think we should talk." I looked around. No way out except the small cellar window, too high and narrow to fit through. "Open the door," I shouted. "This isn't yours to hide anymore." Silence. Then James spoke, voice trembling slightly. "Just hand over whatever you found. It's not worth this." I laughed bitterly. "Not worth it. You stole from him, from your own father." Oliver's tone hardened. "He stole from us first. He was going to hand everything to you, Evelyn. You, the saint who ran away and never looked back. We fixed what he broke." My heart twisted. "He never broke anything. You did." I could hear them arguing outside now, whispers turning to shouts. "James, we can't. She'll go to the police." "Oliver, not if we fix it now." My pulse spiked. I backed away from the stairs, scanning the room for anything. And then I saw the small iron hatch near the far wall, an old service tunnel, probably from when the house was built. The lock was rusted, but I pulled at it with all my strength until it gave way. I crawled inside, the space barely wide enough to move. The smell of earth and mildew was suffocating. My phone light flickered, but I kept crawling until I saw another faint light ahead, the end of the tunnel. I emerged behind the stables, mud covering my hands, rain soaking through my coat. My heart was hammering, but I didn't stop. I ran through the fields until the house was just a shadow in the distance. When I finally stopped, I looked back, and for the first time I didn't feel fear. I felt clarity. My father's truth was mine now. And no matter what they did, no matter how hard they tried to silence it, I'd make sure the world knew who the real Hartwells were. I wiped the rain from my face and whispered to the night. "You locked me out once, but now I hold the key." London always felt louder after Somerset. The hum of the underground, the rush of people, the constant sound of rain on glass. I'd barely slept since that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my father's face from the video, calm, but filled with something he never said out loud. Guilt or a warning. The flash drive sat in my coat pocket, wrapped in a small cloth like it was sacred. I'd booked a cheap room near Paddington Station. The curtains smelled of cigarettes, and the window wouldn't shut properly, but it was quiet enough for me to think. I kept replaying my father's words in my head. "You decide what happens next." That morning, I called Mr. Bennett, the lawyer who had read the will. His voice on the other end was tight and formal, but I could hear a hint of surprise. "Evelyn, I wasn't expecting to hear from you so soon." "I found something," I said, "in my father's study and the cellar." There was a pause long enough to make me wonder if the line had cut. Then he said quietly, "Meet me at my office, but not the one in Bath. There's another place, discreet." The way he said it made my skin prickle. I arrived 2 hours later. The address led me to a quiet street in Westminster, an old building wedged between 2 cafes. Inside, the air smelled of old paper and rain-damp carpet. Mr. Bennett stood behind a desk piled high with files, his glasses slightly crooked. He looked different here, less like the careful lawyer from the will reading, and more like a man carrying something heavy. He gestured for me to sit. "You have it." I nodded and placed the flash drive on the table. When he plugged it into his laptop, the screen lit up with a series of folders. "He gave me a copy of this months ago," he said softly. "Told me to keep it safe until you came." My chest tightened. "So you knew?" "I knew there were things he wanted hidden from your brothers. He said it was the only way to keep you safe." He clicked a folder marked Confidential, Trust. Inside were scanned letters, signed agreements, and then a document titled the Hartwell Restoration Project. "What is this?" I asked. Mr. Bennett turned the screen toward me. "Your father was liquidating assets slowly. He planned to transfer a large portion of the estate's value into a charitable trust. In your name, not for inheritance, Evelyn, for justice. He wanted everything Oliver and James built on fraud to be exposed publicly." I leaned back, the breath leaving me. He knew they'd fight it. "He counted on it," Bennett said quietly. "He told me, let them destroy themselves chasing what isn't theirs." I stared at the papers. Every account, every transaction, documented, time-stamped, undeniable. It was enough to ruin them both. But part of me hesitated. I could still hear Oliver's voice echoing in that cellar he stole from us first. What if there was more to it? What if my father wasn't as innocent as I'd always believed? Bennett must have sensed my doubt. "He wasn't perfect, Evelyn. None of us are, but he did love you, and he wanted you to see that truth doesn't always look clean." Before I could reply, his phone buzzed. He frowned, answered, then stiffened. "Who is this?" His face went pale. "No, she's not here. You've got the wrong number." He hung up and looked at me. "We need to go now." I blinked. "What's wrong?" "That call, it came from your family's estate line. They shouldn't have this number." My pulse spiked. "They know you came to me," he said. "You can't go back there, not yet." I grabbed the flash drive from his desk. "Then, where do I go?" He hesitated, then pulled open a drawer and handed me a small brown envelope. Inside was an old photograph of my father standing in front of a seaside building. A gray, weathered structure with the sign Haven Trust Records Office. "He told me that if anything happened, you'd find your next step there. It's in Devon. He used to make trips there under another name." I looked at the photo again. My father's eyes in it weren't the same as the ones I remembered. They were distant, wary. Mr. Bennett lowered his voice. "Whatever he kept there, Evelyn, it's what your brothers are terrified you'll find." I left his office with my heart in my throat. Outside, London rain blurred everything: people, lights, traffic. I found a taxi and gave the driver the name of the nearest train station. As we drove, I glanced out the window and caught my reflection, tired eyes, damp hair, but something new too. Resolve. I wasn't just chasing the truth anymore. I was carrying it. At Paddington, I bought a one-way ticket to Devon. My phone buzzed again, an unknown number. I hesitated before answering. "Evelyn." It was James. His voice was shaky, almost pleading. "You need to stop. Whatever you think Dad told you, it's not what it seems." "Then tell me what it is," I said quietly. A long silence, then softly, "It's about Mum." I froze. "Mum, she died when I was 10. "No," he whispered. "That's what he told you." The line went dead. For a long moment, I just sat there, staring at the phone screen. My reflection in the black glass looked like someone else entirely, someone standing between two versions of truth. The train whistle sounded. I stepped aboard, clutching the envelope in one hand and the flash drive in the other. Outside, the city lights blurred into streaks of gold and gray as the train began to move. Somewhere beyond those fields and rivers, my father's last secret waited, and with it, the truth about everything I'd ever believed. As the carriage rocked gently and rain ran down the windows, I whispered under my breath, "All right, Dad, I'm listening." The rain followed me all the way to Devon. By the time the train stopped, the sky was a heavy sheet of gray, and the sea wind smelled like salt and secrets. I hadn't been here in years, not since family holidays when Mum was still alive. Even then, my father avoided this town. Now I understood why. The address Mr. Bennett gave me led to the edge of the harbor, a row of old warehouses that had been converted into offices. Most were shut, their windows fogged from the cold. But the one I was looking for stood apart, a faded blue sign barely hanging from a nail, Haven Trust Records Office. The door creaked open when I pushed it. Inside, dust floated through pale light. The place was abandoned, files scattered across desks, sea air creeping in through the cracks. I called out softly, "Hello." Only the echo of my voice replied. In the far corner, a small cabinet stood half open. Inside were hundreds of folders stamped with different names. But one caught my eye, a label written by hand, almost faded with age, H. Evelyn, confidential. My pulse quickened. I pulled it out, the paper inside yellowed and brittle. The first page wasn't a financial document. It was a birth certificate. My mother's name, Clara Evelyn Hartwell, but below it, something that made my breath catch. Under mother's status, it read, Protected Identity under Haven Trust Act, 1993. I turned the page. There was a photograph of her, much younger, standing beside a man in a police uniform I didn't recognize. Behind them, a sign, Crown Witness Program. My heart began to race. My mother had been under protection. Why? I barely had time to think before I heard footsteps outside. Slow, deliberate. Someone was here. I grabbed the file, hid behind a shelf, and held my breath. The door opened with a long groan, and a silhouette filled the frame, tall, broad-shouldered. I knew that walk even before I saw his face. Oliver. He stepped inside, shaking rain from his coat. I knew you couldn't resist, he said quietly. You always had to know more than you should. How did you find me? I whispered. He smirked. Dad wasn't the only one who could keep a secret. His eyes moved to the folder in my hand. You found her, didn't you? The truth about Mum. Tell me what this is, I demanded. Why would she need protection? He laughed, not cruelly, but with something hollow underneath. Because she wasn't who you thought she was. None of us were. I stepped closer. What does that mean? He looked at me for a long time before answering. Dad didn't marry her for love, Evelyn. He married her to keep her safe. She was a whistleblower. She exposed a government contract years ago, one that involved half the investors who later funded Hartwell Holdings. He built the company to protect her identity and then used the same people's money to destroy them quietly. That's what this all was. The world seemed to tilt. So the estate, the fortune, it was all built on lies. He nodded. Lies that kept us alive. My throat tightened. And you and James, you stole from him anyway. His jaw clenched. You don't understand. When Mum died, he changed, obsessed over finishing her work. He said he'd clean the family name. But we were his family too. He wanted to burn everything down, everything we built. I shook my head. You built nothing. He was trying to save you from yourselves. Oliver stepped closer, voice low. You sound just like him. I held the file to my chest, trying to steady my breath. If what you're saying is true, why hide it? Why not tell me? He sighed, eyes softening for the first time. Because you were the only good part of this family left. He kept you away from it, from all of it. And now you've dragged yourself right back in. Lightning flashed through the window, and for a moment I saw the reflection of both of us, tired, drenched, two ghosts of the same broken name. I don't want his money, I said. I just want to understand what he died protecting. Oliver's expression flickered, something like guilt. Then you need to see what's in the vault downstairs. That's where he kept the original records. But once you open that, there's no going back. Before I could reply, a car pulled up outside. Headlights cut through the fog. Oliver turned sharply. James. He looked panicked now. You need to leave. I'm not running again, I said. Evelyn, please, he hissed. He's not here to talk, he's... The sound of a door slamming shut cut him off. Heavy footsteps approached. Too late, Oliver muttered. James appeared in the doorway, soaked, eyes wide and glassy. You told her. Oliver didn't answer. James's voice cracked. He made us promises. You think you know everything, Evelyn. You don't know what he did to us after she died. I stepped forward, heart racing. Then tell me. For a moment, it looked like he might. But then his gaze dropped to the folder in my hands, his expression twisted. He left that for you. He lunged. I stumbled backward, the papers spilling across the floor. Oliver caught him, shouting, James, stop. The two of them struggled, their anger echoing in the hollow room. I grabbed what I could, the file, the photograph, the small envelope that had fallen from inside, and ran toward the back hallway. I could hear them shouting behind me, voices overlapping, anger, regret, something darker I couldn't name. At the end of the corridor, I found the vault door Oliver had mentioned, old, metal with a keypad. And on the wall beside it, scratched faintly into the paint, were 4 numbers, 1993, the same year on Mum's certificate. My hands trembled as I typed the code. The lock clicked. The door opened. Inside was a single metal box, sealed with tape. I tore it open. Inside, more documents, government seals, names, contracts, and a letter with my father's handwriting. If they found you, it's already begun. The truth about your mother, about me, about them, it's all here. You can destroy it, or you can set it free. Behind me, the shouting stopped. The room went silent. I turned, clutching the box. Oliver stood in the doorway, blood on his sleeve, eyes filled with something between relief and sorrow. "Where's James?" I whispered. He swallowed hard. "Gone," he ran, like he always does. He looked at the box, then at me. "So, Evelyn, what are you going to do with it?" Rain poured harder outside, the sound like 1,000 whispers on the roof. I took a deep breath, the words catching in my throat. The morning light filtered through the dusty windows of the Devon office, painting streaks of gold over the leather folders scattered across the old oak desk. I sat there, frozen, my fingers tracing the edge of a sealed envelope marked with my mother's initials. MH for a moment. I couldn't breathe. The air felt heavy, almost sacred, like the room itself had been waiting years for me to walk in. When I finally tore it open, the sound of the paper cutting through silence felt like a confession. Inside, there were letters, handwritten, dated years before my mother disappeared. The first one started with, "Evelyn, if you ever find this," and I swear, my heart stopped. Her handwriting, delicate, familiar, carried the weight of someone who had loved and suffered in equal measure. She wrote about her fears, about the tension in the house before she left. My father, she said, was hiding something to protect us, not from her, but from his own brothers. That line alone twisted everything I'd believed. My uncles, the ones who convinced everyone that she'd left us by choice, were part of it all. My hands trembled as I turned to the next page. The letter mentioned a document, a deed, hidden beneath the old chapel behind our estate. My father, she said, had moved everything there when he realized the family name was being used to bury his mistakes. She begged me, if I ever found out, not to hate him. The tears came slowly, quietly, like rain slipping down glass. I'd spent years resenting him for choosing his empire over his daughter, his silence over my questions. But now, sitting here, surrounded by the ghosts of both of them, I realized maybe silence was his only way to keep me safe. I leaned back, exhaling shakily. The sound of the chair creaking echoed through the empty office. On the desk lay another folder, stamped confidential, private trust holdings. My father's handwriting on the corner read, "For Evelyn when she's ready." My chest tightened. I flipped it open, bank statements, property transfers, offshore accounts, but buried beneath all that was something else. A single photograph. My mother standing outside the chapel holding me as a child, and beside her my father, smiling, both of them. That image shattered me in the gentlest way possible. For the first time in years, I didn't see them as symbols of betrayal and loss. I saw them as 2 flawed people who had fought against the same storm I was now standing in. The door creaked suddenly. I turned sharply, my pulse racing, but it was just the wind tugging through a cracked window. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been watching me since I arrived. The caretaker, perhaps, or maybe one of my brother's men. I pushed the thought aside. Paranoia wouldn't help now. I gathered the letters and locked them in my bag. Then I picked up the photo again and whispered, "I'll finish what you both started." That night, I booked a small room above a cafe in Exeter, too restless to go home. I spread the papers out on the bed, maps, old legal documents, the letter about the chapel. Every line seemed to form a puzzle I was only beginning to understand. When I closed my eyes, I could almost hear my mother's voice, soft, steady, saying, "Truth has its own way of returning home." The next morning, I drove back towards Somerset, the road winding through empty fields and fatting mist. The estate loomed in the distance, its tall iron gates cold and silent. My brothers would be inside by now, still thinking they'd won. That everything my father owned had been passed to them cleanly, without question. They didn't know what I had found. I parked the car near the chapel, its stone walls half covered in ivy, the bell long silent. The ground felt damp beneath my shoes as I walked toward the old wooden doors. I remembered playing there as a child, running between the pews while my mother watched with that quiet smile she always wore. Inside, the air smelled of dust and candle wax. I followed the letter's instructions, beneath the second row, right side. I knelt, my palms brushing the cold floor, and pushed aside a loose wooden panel. Beneath it, wrapped in cloth, was a small tin box. My breath caught. I lifted it carefully, my heart pounding against my ribs. Inside were documents, original property deeds showing that half the estate had been signed over not to my brothers, but to me, dated just before my father's death. Signed, sealed, and witnessed. There was also a second letter, addressed to my daughter, Evelyn. "My dearest girl," it began. "If you're reading this, it means they got to you first. But remember, I trusted time more than I trusted them. What they built on greed, you will rebuild on truth. You were never written out, you were written apart for your own safety. And when the time comes, let no one tell you what you deserve." I pressed the letter to my chest, the words sinking into me like warmth through winter air. Everything I'd believed about being unwanted, abandoned, it wasn't true. He'd been protecting me all along. As I sat there, surrounded by dust and light and the faint scent of the past, something shifted inside me. Not anger, not revenge, just clarity. I wasn't going to fight them by screaming or dragging them into court. No, my father had left something far stronger, truth, proof, and legacy, and now it was mine to reveal. When I stepped outside, the evening light was fading into gold. I looked back at the chapel, its shadow long across the grass, and whispered, "Thank you." As I walked back to my car, I noticed something that stopped me cold, a set of fresh tire marks on the dirt road. Someone had been here, recently, watching. I felt the familiar chill crawl up my spine. Maybe they already knew I'd found something. Maybe the next move wasn't mine anymore. I started the engine, gripping the wheel tightly. The road ahead stretched into the dark, and I could feel it. The truth was only half revealed, and the other half was waiting. By the time I reached the estate, the night had settled like a heavy curtain over the countryside. The mansion glowed faintly from the inside, warm, deceptive light spilling through the tall windows, the kind that made strangers believe everything inside was peaceful. But I knew better. Peace had never lived here. I parked by the old fountain and took a deep breath before stepping out. The air smelled of wet stone and memory. My hand trembled slightly as I pressed the doorbell, its chime echoing through the hall like an old ghost clearing its throat. Footsteps, then the door opened. "Evelyn," said Daniel, my eldest brother, his voice low, surprised, cautious. "You shouldn't be here." "I could say the same," I replied quietly, walking past him into the grand hall. My footsteps sounded small against the marble floor. The portraits of our ancestors lined the walls, watching in silent judgment. I could feel their eyes on me, as if the family name itself wanted to remind me where I stood, or where they thought I stood. Samuel was already there, leaning against the fireplace, a drink in hand. "So the prodigal daughter returns," he murmured. "What's next? You're here to reclaim the furniture." I met his eyes. "No," I said, steady, "just the truth." He laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. Daniel shut the door behind me and crossed his arms. "If this is about the will again, it's over. You were there. You heard the lawyer. Father made his choice." "Did he?" I asked, taking out the sealed document from my bag, the one from the chapel. "Because I found something that says otherwise." Samuel's smirk vanished. Daniel's jaw tightened. "What is that?" he asked. I placed it on the table. "The original deed. Father signed it days before his death. Half the estate to me. He hid it. You knew, didn't you?" Daniel didn't answer. He just looked at the paper, his face pale under the chandelier light. Samuel stepped forward, his voice trembling now, somewhere between anger and fear. "That's impossible." The lawyer. Was paid, I cut in. Father's old lawyer, Mr. Benson, had a copy. He confirmed it, but he also told me something else. I took a breath. Father didn't change the will on his own. Someone forced him to. Silence. Samuel's hand clenched around his glass until it cracked slightly. Daniel finally spoke, his voice low. You don't understand what was happening, Evelyn. Then make me, I said, because I'm done living in half-truths and shadows. He looked at me for a long time, the kind of look that carries years of guilt behind it. Then he exhaled, a sound like surrender. It wasn't meant to be this way, he whispered. Father, he was trying to protect you from the rest of us, from the deal he made. I frowned. What deal? Samuel threw his glass into the fire, shattering the silence. Enough, Daniel. She doesn't need to know. She does, Daniel snapped back. She deserves to. I stepped closer, my voice shaking now. Tell me, what did you do? Daniel ran a hand through his hair, eyes glistening. Father was going to expose everything, the fake charities, the offshore transfers, all of it. He said he was tired of pretending the Hartwell name still meant something good. Samuel panicked. He called the board. He told them Father was well, that his mind was slipping. My breath hitched. You. Samuel cut in, desperate. I did what was necessary. He was going to destroy us. Everything our family built gone. You mean everything you stole, I said coldly. You were never protecting him. You were protecting yourself. Daniel's voice softened. Evelyn, Father changed the will because he found out about the accounts. He wanted to put it right, give you control. But before he could sign the final transfer, he was forced to sign another, under threat. Whose threat? I demanded. Daniel hesitated. His eyes flicked toward Samuel, and for a moment I thought I already knew the answer. But then his voice dropped. Not his, someone higher, the Hartwell board. They knew if Father gave you control, you uncover everything. So they pushed him quietly to sign it over to us with conditions. That's why he added the secret addendum before he died. He was trying to outsmart them. My head spun. The pieces fell into place with cruel precision. My father hadn't betrayed me. He'd sacrificed himself, and maybe even his reputation, to protect me. Samuel's voice cracked. You think he was some saint. He lied to all of us. He lied to save you, I whispered, and you used it to bury him. The fire flickered violently in the hearth, shadows dancing across the walls. No one spoke. The weight of truth hung in the air, thick as smoke. Finally, Daniel stepped forward, his voice trembling. Evelyn, there's more. There's something Father left behind. A recording. He gave it to Benson. He said if the board ever turned on us, it would surface. It has your name on it. My heart pounded. Where is it? Daniel looked away. In the vault at the London branch. But if the board finds out you're looking, they'll come for you. I took a slow breath, my resolve settling like stone. Then I guess they'll have to. Samuel turned sharply. You're making a mistake. You think you can fight them. You're one woman against an empire. Maybe, I said quietly, but truth doesn't need an army. For a long moment, none of us moved. The fire crackled softly. The house that had once been my prison now felt like the stage for something final. Daniel finally spoke again, his voice barely audible. Be careful, Evie. Father used to say, once you wake the truth, it doesn't go back to sleep. I nodded. Then it's time it stayed awake. As I turned to leave, Samuel's voice stopped me. If you open that vault, you'll destroy this family. I looked over my shoulder. No, I said, you already did. I walked out into the cold night, my footsteps echoing down the marble corridor. The stars above Somerset were faint but steady, like distant witnesses refusing to look away. I knew the road ahead would be dangerous. But for the first time in years, I felt alive because the truth was no longer buried. It was coming. London greeted me with rain, the kind that doesn't pour, just lingers, soft and cold, soaking you quietly until you stop noticing. I stood outside the Hartwell Financial Building, staring up at its glass facade glimmering in the streetlights. It looked nothing like home, clean, modern, heartless. And yet, this was where my father's final truth was buried. I pulled my coat tighter and stepped inside. The marble lobby was silent except for the faint hum of lights. A security guard glanced up briefly, but didn't question me. The Hartwell name still opened doors, even when the family behind it was falling apart. The elevator ride felt endless. I watched my reflection in the mirrored walls, tired eyes, damp hair, determination burning beneath the exhaustion. For a moment, I could almost hear my father's voice. "You'll understand one day, Evelyn, why silence was the only weapon left." The doors opened to the top floor. It was dimly lit, empty. The vault was at the end of the corridor, a steel door marked private holdings. I reached for the key Mr. Benson had given me before he vanished into retirement. My hand trembled slightly as I slid it into the lock. It clicked open. The air inside was colder, stiller. Rows of cabinets and drawers lined the walls, labeled with numbers instead of names. I followed the one that matched my father's records. File 27B inside, wrapped in brown paper, was a small black case. I placed it on the table and opened it. A digital recorder sat inside, old but perfectly preserved. Beside it, a handwritten note in my father's script. "For Evelyn, only when you're ready to hear why." My heart pounded. My fingers hesitated over the play button, as if pressing it would somehow change everything I'd ever believed about him or about myself. Then I pressed it. The recorder clicked, and after a pause, his voice filled the room, deep, calm, unmistakably him. "Evelyn," he began softly, "if you're listening, it means I couldn't protect you from what came next. I never wanted you to inherit my battles, but truth has a way of choosing its own heirs." I felt tears sting my eyes. His voice carried warmth even through the static, like a hand reaching through time. "You've grown into everything your mother hoped for: kind, brave, unwilling to bend for money or power. I kept you away because this family stopped understanding those things long ago. The name Hartwell became a crown of iron, heavy, cold, and cruel. And your brothers, they forgot what it meant to build rather than take." He paused, as if searching for words. "There's something you must know. Your mother didn't leave us by choice. She found out about the Hartwell Foundation, the one Samuel and the board created to hide their transfers. She confronted them. The night she vanished, I was told to make a decision: silence her or lose everything. I chose to lose." My breath hitched. The room seemed to tilt. "She ran," he continued quietly, "not to escape me, but to protect you. The board made it look like betrayal so the scandal would never touch the family. I signed their documents to keep them from finding her, and I swore I'd fix it someday. That's why I rewrote the will. That's why I built the vault, but I ran out of time." The recording crackled faintly. "If you're hearing this, it's because you found the chapel. Good. That means you still have her strength. But remember this: revenge will give you noise, not peace. Truth will hurt, but it's the only inheritance worth keeping." He paused again, then his voice softened. "Tell Daniel the letter he never opened is in the piano. He'll understand. As for Samuel, forgive him if you can. If not now, someday. And Evelyn, don't let the Hartwell name define you. Let it end with you, not because you destroyed it, but because you redeemed it." The tape clicked off. I stood there for a long time, staring at the recorder, tears streaming down my face. It wasn't just a confession. It was a bridge, one my father had built between guilt and grace. Every wall I'd built against him crumbled in that moment. I replayed the last line again and again. Don't let the name define you. When I finally turned to leave, something caught my eye, a second file, hidden beneath the case. It was labeled Foundation Phase 2. I hesitated, then opened it. Inside were transaction records, names, signatures, board members, politicians, and companies all tied to the Hartwell Foundation's secret network. I realized, with a sick twist of irony, that my father hadn't just left me the truth. He'd left me power, the kind that could burn the empire down if I wanted to. I closed the file slowly. My reflection in the vault's steel door stared back at me, the daughter they had erased, now holding the one thing that could erase them instead. Outside, London's rain had stopped. I walked through the streets under the yellow glow of street lamps, the recorder in my pocket, my father's voice still echoing in my mind. Revenge will give you noise, not peace. But how do you choose peace when lies have shaped your whole life? As I passed a cafe window, I caught a glimpse of a man in a dark coat watching me from across the street. His gaze was fixed, deliberate. I turned sharply, but when I looked again, he was gone. I quickened my pace. Maybe Daniel had warned them. Maybe the board already knew I'd found the recording. I reached the hotel, locked the door, and sat on the bed, my pulse racing. I opened my laptop and began scanning the documents from the vault. Every name, every number, all proof that the Hartwell Foundation wasn't charity. It was control. Then, as I reached the final page, I froze. At the bottom was a signature I didn't expect, Daniel Hartwell. My chest tightened. My father had trusted him, but Daniel had been part of the second phase all along. I shut the laptop slowly, my heart pounding in my throat. The betrayal was deeper than I'd imagined, and this time it wasn't just about inheritance. It was about truth itself. I turned off the light, staring into the dark room, the city whispering outside my window. Somewhere out there, the last pieces of my family's truth were still waiting, and I was done running from them. The rain had started again, slow, deliberate drops that painted streaks across the glass walls of Daniel's penthouse. Evelyn stood there, drenched from the storm, her coat heavy with water and secrets. Daniel was sitting by the fire, whiskey in hand, his calm too practiced to be real. "You shouldn't have come here, Evelyn," he said quietly, not looking at her. "I had to," she replied. "You lied to me about father, about everything." Daniel sighed, setting the glass down. "You think you know the truth. You've read papers, heard recordings, but you still don't understand the man he was." "I understand enough," she shot back. "I heard the recording. He said someone inside the family pushed him into the deal that ruined everything. Someone he trusted." Daniel's jaw tightened. "And you think that was me?" Evelyn took a step closer. I know. He left proof, hidden signatures, false transfers. You were moving money before he even signed the last agreement." For a long moment, Daniel said nothing. The only sound was the rain, tapping against the glass like a slow heartbeat. Then he rose, walked to the cabinet, and pulled out a small black folder. "If you're going to judge me," he said, handing it to her, "at least read all of it." Inside were photos of their father meeting a man she didn't recognize. Government seal, intelligence crest, old dates. Beneath them, letters written in her father's hand, words trembling with guilt and urgency. "They've taken control of the company, Daniel. If I don't sign, they'll destroy what's left. I'm doing this for Evelyn. Protect her at any cost." Her eyes widened. "What is this?" Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. "Father wasn't forced by me. He was blackmailed by them. The board, the investors, all of them were laundering money through Hartwell Industries. He wanted out, but they wouldn't let him. When he refused, they threatened to expose everything. He thought his death would protect us." Evelyn's breath caught. "Then why did you keep it secret?" "Because he made me promise. He believed if the truth came out, the family name would die. And he was right. You think the world cares about his reasons? They'd destroy us for the scandal." She looked at him, her eyes burning. "You kept silent while he died alone." Daniel turned away, his voice breaking. "Do you think that doesn't haunt me? Every night I hear him asking me not to tell you. He wanted to carry that shame himself. I only did what he asked." The firelight flickered across his face, a face that looked older, worn down by years of guilt. Evelyn took a slow step closer, her anger softening into something deeper, sorrow. "He didn't need protection," she whispered. "He needed truth." Daniel looked at her, and for the first time the mask broke. "And what about you, Evelyn? You think you can handle it? The files you found, they don't just incriminate the company. They tie our family to government operations that no one is supposed to know about. If you expose this, it's not just our name that dies. We die with it." Her heart pounded. Then maybe that's what it takes to make things right. Daniel shook his head. "You sound just like him." For a long, silent moment, they just stood there, two siblings, bound by the same ghost, the same ruin. The thunder outside rolled like a verdict. Then Evelyn noticed something on the folder's last page, a signature that didn't belong to her father or Daniel. It was dated the day before his death. Signed, Dr. Helena Cross. Her eyes widened. Who is she? Daniel hesitated. You don't want to know. I need to. He looked at her with a mix of fear and exhaustion. She was his doctor and his handler, the one who kept him stable. She worked for them, the same people who threatened him. Father trusted her, but after he died, she disappeared. Every record of her was erased. Evelyn felt a chill crawl down her spine. You think she killed him? Daniel didn't answer, but the silence said enough. The storm outside intensified, the wind howling against the glass. Evelyn picked up the folder and clutched it to her chest. I'm going to find her, she said firmly. If she's still alive, she knows what really happened. Daniel stepped forward. Evelyn, stop. You're walking into something you can't control. These people don't just vanish, they erase. If you go digging, they'll come for you too. She turned to him, her voice calm but unshakable. Then let them. I've spent my life living in the shadow of secrets. It ends now. Daniel closed his eyes. At least take someone with you. Evelyn gave a small, sad smile. You forget, brother, I don't trust anyone anymore. She turned and walked toward the door. As she reached for the handle, Daniel spoke softly, the first time his voice trembled. Evelyn, if you find her, ask her why Father called me the night before he died. Ask her what he said before the call cut off. Evelyn paused. What did he say? Daniel looked straight at her. He said your mother's name. The door clicked shut behind her, leaving him in silence. Outside, the city lights blurred through the storm. Evelyn walked into the rain, her mind spinning, Dr. Helena Cross, her mother, the call before his death. Everything was beginning to connect, yet nothing made sense. She stopped at the edge of the street, looking up at the dark sky. Lightning flashed, and for a brief second, she thought she saw a figure watching from across the road. A woman in a long coat, standing still in the rain, face hidden beneath a hat. When Evelyn blinked, the figure was gone. She exhaled, gripping the folder tighter. You can hide, she murmured, but I'm coming for the truth. And as she disappeared into the storm, the reflection of that distant shadow lingered behind, watching, waiting. The next morning, the world felt quieter, as if the storm had taken something with it. Evelyn sat by her window in a small rented flat on the edge of London, her hair still damp, her mind still trapped between what she had learned and what she feared was coming. She had barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her father's handwriting, shaky, desperate, and the name, Dr. Helena Cross. A name that shouldn't exist. She turned on her laptop, opened the encrypted files she had copied from Daniel's folder, and began tracing the doctor's records. The system fought back, redirections, access denied pop-ups, broken archives. But Evelyn had learned persistence from her father. After hours of searching, she found something, a single entry buried in the UK Medical Register archives from 1998. Helena Cross, psychiatric specialist, affiliation, the Elmridge Institute, Devon. Devon. The same place where her father had once built his research retreat. Her pulse quickened. She packed her bag, threw on her coat, and caught the earliest train. The countryside outside the window blurred, green fields drenched in last night's rain, sheep grazing under gray clouds. But her eyes stayed fixed on her reflection, the same brown eyes her father once said looked too much like your mother. By noon, she arrived. The air was colder here, the wind carrying that damp, earthy smell of forgotten places. The Elmridge Institute was no longer an active facility. The signboard hung loose on rusted chains, letters faded. The main building stood alone, windows sealed, ivy crawling across its stone walls. Evelyn pushed open the gate. It creaked like a whisper from the past. Inside, dust floated in beams of weak sunlight. She found the old receptionist's desk, drawers still filled with patient files, but many had been shredded or blacked out. She searched room after room until she reached an office with a broken nameplate, Dr. Helena Cross. The air felt colder here. On the wall was a photo, the institute's staff lined in front of the building. Her father stood at the center, smiling stiffly beside a woman with pale eyes and a calm expression. Dr. Cross. Evelyn touched the photograph. Her father had said he came here for research on trauma and neural therapy. But this felt different, secretive, clinical, cold. Then something caught her eye, a locked cabinet behind the desk. She knelt, forced it open with a metal rod, and found folders marked Project Riverlight. Inside were notes, observations, test results, and names of subjects. Her mother's name was one of them. Evelyn froze. Subject 14, Myra Hartwell. Condition, dissociative episodes linked to stress trauma. Recommended memory therapy under controlled sedation. Her heart pounded. No, this can't be. She turned the pages, all signed by Dr. Helena Cross and approved by her father. The handwriting blurred as tears filled her eyes. Her father hadn't just known about her mother's condition. He had consented to her being experimented on. She stumbled back, her breathing uneven. The air felt heavy, suffocating. And then she saw it, another folder beneath the stack, dated 2 months before her father's death. It contained a transcript of a recorded session. Patient, Myra Hartwell. Doctor, Helena Cross. The text began normal, medication updates, emotional state, until one line at the end froze her blood. Patient reports seeing Evelyn during episodes, though Evelyn was never present. Claims they took her and replaced her. Recommends immediate observation, possible genetic memory link. Evelyn dropped the papers. The words didn't make sense. Genetic memory, replacement. Her mind spun until she noticed the last page with her father's signature beneath Dr. Cross's. It read, "Terminate Riverlight, she cannot know." The room suddenly felt alive, creaking floorboards, a faint hum of wind pressing against the old glass. Evelyn's thoughts raced. Her mother had been here, her father had known, and Dr. Cross had vanished after his death. Her phone buzzed suddenly, shattering the silence. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered, "Hello." A woman's voice, soft, steady, chilling. "You shouldn't be there, Evelyn." Her breath caught. "Who is this?" The voice didn't waver. "You're repeating your mother's mistakes. Leave now, and maybe you'll live long enough to understand why she left." "Helena," Evelyn whispered. Silence, then a faint, distant click. The call ended. Her hands shook. She ran to the window, scanning the overgrown field outside. For a split second, she saw a dark car parked beyond the gate, headlights dim, engine off. Watching. She grabbed her bag, stuffed the papers inside, and bolted down the hall. Every sound felt amplified, the echo of her boots, the creak of the floor, the pounding in her chest. She burst through the main door and ran until the building vanished behind the trees. When she finally reached the road, her knees gave out. She fell to the ground, gasping for breath, clutching the folder. Her father's words echoed in her mind. "I'm doing this for Evelyn. Protect her at any cost." Now she understood. He hadn't been protecting her from outsiders. He was protecting her from the truth. Because whatever Riverlight was, whatever Dr. Cross had done, Evelyn wasn't just her father's daughter. She was part of something he tried to erase. As the wind howled across the empty road, she whispered to herself, trembling, "What did you do to us, Father?" Far behind her, through the mist, the black car's engine started, slow, deliberate, and began moving her way. The rain hadn't stopped since she left Devon. Sheets of water blurred the motorways as Evelyn drove through the night, every flash of lightning turning the rearview mirror into a warning. The black car had followed her for nearly 20 minutes before vanishing behind the curve of the A303. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She stopped at a lonely service station near Taunton, grabbed her laptop, and found a quiet corner inside the cafe. Her hands trembled as she connected to a secure hotspot, the same one her father used for his research backups. A password prompt appeared. She typed in the phrase she'd memorized from the old recording in the vault. "Truth sleeps in silence." The screen flickered once, then opened a file directory marked GovNet, restricted/Project Riverlight. Her stomach tightened. These weren't family documents anymore, they were encrypted government files. Her father hadn't just been part of something secret, he'd been hiding from it. The first file was a name list: scientists, psychiatrists, military consultants. Helena Cross appeared beside the initials MI Div 7A. Below that, 2 words chilled her: memory reconstruction. Evelyn scrolled further until a subfolder caught her eye: subject logs. Her finger hovered before clicking. Subject, 14B, Evelyn Myra Hartwell. Her throat went dry. The file opened to a blurred scan of a medical record: her name, date of birth, genetic data, followed by a chilling statement. Subject 14B displays exceptional neural retention of trauma-linked memory imprints. Recommend Phase 2 cognitive conditioning, partial suppression for emotional stability. She froze. The words didn't fit. They couldn't. Partial suppression. Of what? She clicked another file, a video log this time. Static filled the screen before an image appeared: a white room, soft humming, and her father standing beside a chair. Someone was sitting in it, a small child with wires across her temples. It was her. Her own 8-year-old face stared blankly into the camera, eyes glazed. Her father's voice was calm but strained. "She's remembering again," he said quietly. "She keeps seeing Myra in her dreams. I told you to stop the sessions, Helena." A woman's voice replied off-screen, smooth, clinical. "She's remembering because her neural pattern is mirroring Myra's. They're bonded, mother and daughter. The experiment worked, Richard. You just don't like the result." Evelyn's heart pounded. The child on screen flinched as light flashed above her. Her father shouted, "Enough," and the footage cut to black. Evelyn sat frozen, unable to breathe. Her hands trembled so violently she could barely close the laptop. The cafe was nearly empty now, only the sound of rain and a barista wiping down tables. She whispered, "What did you do to me, Dad?" Her mind flashed back to her childhood, the gaps in her memory, the years she couldn't recall. She'd always thought it was grief after her mother's disappearance, but what if it was? What if her father had erased something? She looked back at the laptop. There was one more document: Phase Closure Report, Dr. Helena Cross. She opened it. Subject 14B released from program after father's intervention. Records transferred to Ministry Sublevel 3, London. Incomplete memory reconstruction. Residual recall risk high. Recommend continued observation. London, Sublevel 3. Her father's research vault wasn't just a lab. It was connected to something much larger, something official. Suddenly, her laptop screen glitched. The files vanished, replaced by a red warning banner. Access breach, DET. Connection TERMINATD. Evelyn yanked the power cord out and slammed the lid shut. Her heart raced. Someone had seen her. She looked out the rain-streaked window. Across the car park, a man in a gray coat stood beneath the lamppost, not moving, just watching. She forced herself to breathe, grabbed her bag, and walked quickly out the side door. The cold rain hit her face like needles as she hurried to her car. She started the engine, headlights cutting through the fog, but before she could pull away, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her pulse spiked. She hesitated, then answered. A calm male voice said, "Evelyn Hartwell, you have something that belongs to us." She didn't reply. The voice continued. "Your father tried to stop Riverlight. He failed. Don't make the same mistake." "Who are you?" she demanded. "Someone who kept you alive," the voice said. Then the line went dead. Evelyn's chest tightened. She dropped the phone onto the seat, gripping the steering wheel. Someone who kept you alive. Her thoughts spun: her father, Helena, the experiments, the erased memories. Maybe she wasn't meant to remember. Maybe she was the experiment's result, the living proof of whatever Riverlight had tried to create. She drove through the storm until dawn, following the GPS coordinates left in one of the corrupted files, a storage facility near Whitechapel, London. Her father had once told her, "If you ever lose trust in me, follow the trail I left for the truth." The building looked abandoned, cracked windows, graffiti, and silence. She parked outside, heart hammering. Inside, the corridors smelled of dust and metal. Every door she passed bore a number, until she reached one with faded letters, S3/ARCHIVES. She entered. Rows of file cabinets stood in the dark, a faint hum of servers still alive somewhere deep within. She switched on her torch and began searching. Then she found it, a drawer labeled RIVERLIGHT, TRMINATD files. Inside were hundreds of folders, each marked with codes. She sifted through until she found one that stopped her heart cold. 14B, Evelyn Hartwell. Reconstruction complete, final phase pending. She opened it and found not medical notes but a letter. Her father's handwriting. If you're reading this, Evelyn, it means they know you've remembered. I'm sorry for everything I did to keep you safe, erasing what you weren't ready to see. Your mother wasn't taken. She left to protect you from what you carry inside. You are not the experiment, you are the reason it failed. Find Helena. She knows how to end it. Evelyn's tears blurred the words. Her father hadn't betrayed her. He had hidden her from them, from herself. She closed the file, wiped her face, and whispered, "Then I'll find her." Behind her, something creaked. Footsteps echoed softly in the corridor. She turned, flashlight trembling. A figure stood at the far end, tall, still, coat dripping with rain. Evelyn's voice broke the silence. "Who are you?" The figure stepped forward, and under the weak light she saw the face, older, pale, eyes sharp and knowing. It was Dr. Helena Cross. The air in the corridor felt thick, heavy, like it had been waiting for this moment for years. Evelyn's flashlight trembled in her hand as she stared at the woman standing under the flickering light. Dr. Helena Cross. Older now, her silver hair tied back, her expression calm, almost maternal. But her eyes, cold and calculating, carried the same quiet authority that had haunted Evelyn through files, photos, and half-remembered dreams. "Hello, Evelyn," Helena said softly, as if they'd simply met again after years apart. "You've grown into what your father hoped for." Evelyn's throat was dry. "You shouldn't know my father hoped for anything. You destroyed him." Helena tilted her head. "Did I? Or did he destroy himself trying to protect you from a truth he helped create?" The words hit like a blade, quiet but sharp. Evelyn stepped closer, her voice shaking with anger and disbelief. "What truth? That you turned my mother into an experiment? That you used me as a child?" Helena sighed, almost sadly. "You've read the reports, but you don't understand them. You were never an experiment, Evelyn. You were a correction." Evelyn froze. "A what?" Helena gestured toward the room behind her, the old archive chamber now lit by the dim glow of an overhead bulb. "Come. If you've come this far, you deserve to hear it." Evelyn hesitated, then followed. The walls were lined with metal cabinets, screens still humming with weak power. On one table sat a single projector, old but functional. Helena pressed a button, and a reel began to play against the far wall. Flickering images filled the room, footage of a woman, restrained, trembling. Evelyn's chest tightened. It was her mother, Myra. She was the first subject to survive full neural imprinting, Helena said quietly. Project Riverlight wasn't about erasing memories. It was about preserving them, transferring them, binding them between bloodlines. Evelyn's breath caught. Binding, what does that mean? Your mother's mind was collapsing under trauma, Helena continued, but your father couldn't let her go. So he volunteered to continue the trials, to save her memories, her consciousness, by linking them to someone genetically compatible. Evelyn's voice cracked. To me. Helena turned, eyes soft but merciless. Yes, you were the link, the child whose mind would carry her echoes, her emotions, her pain, her instincts. Evelyn staggered back, shaking her head. That's impossible. Is it? Helena asked gently. Tell me, Evelyn, how many times have you dreamed of her without ever remembering her face? How often have you felt grief that wasn't yours? Evelyn's heartbeat thundered in her ears. Memories flickered, flashes of water, laughter, a woman's perfume she'd never owned but somehow knew. Helena stepped closer. You've been living with both of them inside you, Myra's fragments and your own. That's why your father shut Riverlight down. He realized what we had done wasn't salvation, it was imprisonment. Evelyn's eyes filled. You made me live her pain. No, Helena said softly. Your father did by asking us to save her. I only built what he wanted. For a long moment, neither spoke. The film reel clicked in the background, looping the same frame of Myra's face, eyes open, staring straight into the lens, as if she were looking through time. Evelyn turned away. Why are you telling me this now? You could have erased me, silenced me like the rest. Helena's lips pressed into a thin line. Because you're the last living part of what Riverlight meant to prove, that consciousness isn't just memory, it's legacy. And because your father left something with me before he died. Evelyn looked up sharply. What did he leave? Helena reached into her coat and pulled out a small metal drive, old, scratched, marked with a single word. For Evelyn. Evelyn's hand trembled as she took it. What's on this? His final recording, Helena said quietly. He wanted me to give it to you when you found me. He said you'd understand only when you stopped running from who you are. Evelyn stared at the drive, her pulse racing. Helena's voice softened, almost human now. He loved you, Evelyn. Everything he did, even the things that broke him, were to protect what he thought was left of your mother. But what he didn't see was that you became something beyond either of them. Evelyn looked up, tears burning in her eyes. And what am I supposed to do now? Keep living with someone else's memories haunting me? Helena shook her head. No, you end it. You finish what he couldn't. Evelyn frowned. By doing what? Helena's gaze darkened. By destroying Riverlight, the data, the blueprints, every trace that can ever be used again. Because others are still looking, and they won't stop until they find you. Evelyn stepped back. And what about you? What will you do? Helena smiled faintly, that sad kind of smile that comes from someone who knows their sins can't be undone. Me. I already lived too long in their shadows. Maybe this is where it ends for me. The silence that followed felt infinite. Evelyn looked down at the drive, then at Helena, the woman who'd both created and haunted her life. Then Helena said softly, Your mother wasn't a victim, Evelyn. She volunteered. She wanted you to carry her so a part of her would never die. Evelyn's tears finally broke free. She whispered, Then maybe that's why I can't hate you. Helena nodded once, her expression unreadable. Good, because hate is just memory repeating itself. Break the cycle, Evelyn. That's the only way you'll ever truly be free. A sudden noise broke the silence, footsteps echoing from the hall outside. Helena turned sharply. They found us. Evelyn's pulse spiked. Who? The same ones who ended your father. Helena moved to the wall and pulled down a hidden panel, revealing a narrow passage. Go, take the drive. Get out before they see you. Evelyn hesitated. What about you? Helena smiled one last time. I was part of the beginning. You'll be the one who ends it. Before Evelyn could respond, Helena pushed her through the passage and sealed the door. Gunmetal footsteps grew louder, voices shouting orders. Evelyn ran down the dark tunnel, clutching the drive against her chest, heart racing, eyes wet with both grief and fire. Somewhere behind her, the sound of gunfire broke the silence, followed by a single, echoing scream. Evelyn didn't look back. She just kept running through the dark, through the pain, until the night swallowed her. The rain had stopped, but the world outside still looked bruised, a pale, gray sky hanging low over the sea. Evelyn sat in her car at the edge of the cliff, the flash drive in her trembling hand. The waves below were violent, crashing like they knew what she was about to hear. She slid the drive into her laptop. The folder blinked open. One file, no title. Just a timestamp, the night before her father died. She pressed play. At first, there was only static. Then his voice, tired, heavy, but still carrying that steady calm she remembered from childhood. If you're hearing this, Evelyn, then they failed to stop you. Her throat tightened. Riverlight was never meant to be a weapon. It was supposed to heal memory, to help soldiers, victims, people who lost themselves to trauma. But the board saw profit, not peace. They twisted it. And your mother, she found out. She tried to expose them. Evelyn froze. When she disappeared, I thought I'd lost everything. But I couldn't let her death mean nothing. So I hid the truth in you. Riverlight wasn't just an experiment, Evelyn. You were the key. You carry fragments of her memory, her last moments, because she wanted you to remember what they tried to erase. The screen glitched. Her reflection flickered back at her, her eyes wide, full of disbelief and fear. They'll come for you now, but don't let them take the truth again. You are stronger than they ever planned for you to be. The file ended. Silence. For a long time, she couldn't move. The sea roared beneath her, and her heart beat like it was trying to escape her chest. Then her phone buzzed. A message, unknown number. We know what you have. Meet me before sunset, or everything burns. She knew it was Helena. Hours later, Evelyn walked through the remains of the old government lab, now abandoned, half swallowed by fog and vines. She heard footsteps before she saw her. Dr. Helena Cross stood in the broken light, a thin smile hiding behind calm eyes. You found the message, Helena said. Then you know why it must stay buried. Evelyn's voice shook. You experimented on us. You erased people's lives. We saved them, Helena replied coldly. Your mother volunteered. She believed in Riverlight until she saw what it could become. But by then, it was too late. Evelyn stepped closer. You killed her. No, Helena whispered. You did. Evelyn froze. Helena nodded slowly. You were a child, Evelyn. She tried to remove her memories from you. The process went wrong. You absorbed them instead. Her mind fractured inside yours. That's why your memories don't line up. She's been part of you all along. Tears welled in Evelyn's eyes. You're lying. Helena reached into her coat, pulled out a small black device. This is the original Riverlight core. Destroy it and you destroy every trace, including her. Keep it and they'll find you. They'll use you again. Evelyn looked at the device, small enough to fit in her palm, heavy as a world. She could hear her father's voice echoing again. You are stronger than they ever planned for you to be. For the first time, she understood. Riverlight wasn't about control. It was about memory, love, and the cost of truth. She took a deep breath. No more control, she whispered. Before Helena could stop her, Evelyn smashed the device against the floor. Sparks exploded. The room lit up with a blinding white flash. The glass shattered. The sea wind tore through the open walls. When the light faded, Helena was gone. The building was burning. Evelyn stumbled out into the rain, her body shaking, her mind strangely quiet, peaceful even. She walked to the cliff again, watching the sunrise break through the mist. Her father's words echoed softly in her head. You are the light they couldn't erase. She closed her eyes and let the wind carry it away. A week later, news channels across the UK began reporting leaked documents, data from Riverlight, files proving government-funded experiments on human memory. No one knew who released them. Some said it was a hacker, others said it was someone inside. But Evelyn Hartwell was never seen again. Somewhere along the southern coast, people still talk about a woman who walks by the sea at dawn, silent, calm, her hair drifting in the wind like smoke, as if she remembers a world that no one else can.